The difference that DeepL is making comparing to maybe some of those more consumer-oriented solutions on the market is the accuracy part, is the integrations into workflows, is the ability even for a company to tweak their language of the translation towards what they need. I think we're moving into this direction where language is not gonna be an issue at all. And I wouldn't want to forget about the kind of human aspect of how much language is embedded into who we are and how we can exchange with others. Having access to technology which makes it easier for people who are not so well versed in a foreign language, that helps a lot them to be competitive in the work market, but also them being able to express themselves freely and preserve the language. Hi, I'm Jarek Kutylowski. I'm a founder and CEO of DeepL. I come from a computer science background. I am super excited about what technology can actually do to make our lives better and how that can have an impact. And out of that passion, I founded DeepL, and I'm kind of right now looking into how AI can help businesses become more international, can help in all of those language kind of issues and challenges that we have every day. And very much looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I was reading you DeepL, the tech started at a company called Lingay, is that right?
Lingui, it's called Lingui.
Lingui. Yeah.
DeepL is a spin-off out of the company basically, and we've been looking into like the translation space or the language space already earlier in that business, and then at some point in time, 2017, we've noticed, hey, there is this new amazing technology, neural networks, the foundation of AI as we know it nowadays. And you can actually do more about that. And there is an opportunity for us to go into that space.
Yeah. So describe DeepL's product and tech. I'm curious. I mean, we spoke briefly earlier about uh, that space because ever since Transformers hit the scene, there have been all kinds of companies popping up with translation solutions. So tell me about DeepL, what kinds of applications you're applied to, and what differentiates DeepL from the crowd.
Yeah. I mean, it's been quite a journey, of course. Like the company already exists for 8 years, and the product is like something totally different nowadays than it was back
Sure.
then in 2017. We've been around quite a little bit earlier, even the Transformers reached the market. We've been kind of pioneering the way, or like how you designed neural networks for translation specifically, and maybe language in a more general sense. And for that purpose, we've been like doing this really cutting edge AI frontier research in terms of like what are the model architectures, what really works better, what is a better way of training those models, what is the data that you should feed those models to always achieve the best quality and accuracy in translation, but also paired with like we really want to make sure that translation has this nuance, that it feels natural, it feels native, and sometimes that is clashing with the accuracy aspect also. If you're translating marketing materials in a different way than technical documents or legal documents maybe. And we've been making sure that our AI models actually can capture all of that, with really the aim on looking at what businesses need, while we are a PLG company and therefore have grown through this very strong user base that we've been able to build. Nevertheless, our goal has been always to make sure that we can provide language solutions to businesses in all of those areas where really accuracy matters, where embedding into the workflows of your employees matter. Think both internal use cases where it's about the communication between different offices in different countries, or even external when you're talking to customers that are outside in a different country where you maybe don't have field operations in.
Yeah, and this is both text to text and speech to text. Does it also do speech to speech?
Yeah, our first approach to that was really text to text. It has evolved then towards documents. I think that's something that's also incredibly important for our customers. Like a lot of the kind of written content is actually out there in the form of documents, and it just makes a lot of sense to approach document translation in a slightly different way. And since last year, we also have our speech to text translation out in the market. We're looking into the speech to speech space. We still feel it's a little bit early for that from a technological perspective, that actually the speech to text kind of live captioning during a meeting gives you the better user experience and actually is allowing you to better follow on what's happening in a meeting. But definitely something that we're looking into and kind of waiting on when is the technology going to be actually at a point where it brings a lot of value to the kind of typical business use case.
Yeah, yeah, and the speech to speech, particularly live speech to speech, the issue is depending on the language pair, you have to wait until the end of a sentence before you can translate it, and that creates a latency issue. Is that right? Like
Yeah,
Chinese to German or something, where in German the verb's at the end, in Chinese it's at the beginning, and
yeah, that is a big problem, and I think in those languages it is the biggest one. Also, in other language pairs, like some of those problems come up too. So there is like a little bit of an inherent latency embedded in the problem in some ways,
yeah, yeah,
unless we are able to predict what you're gonna say. And that is also a fascinating field of research, because quite often the models can do quite a good prediction on what the end of the sentence is going to be. Nevertheless, there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be kind of
sure,
curveballs coming up, and then they will have to deal with that. But there's a few approaches of which we are thinking about how you can actually do that better with lower latency, because latency is kind of the biggest problem
right.
in this whole space.
Yeah, but as long as you're doing the output in text, and you're not expecting live translation, it gives the model time to look at the entire sentence, and that are you using uh, pure transformer models? I've been talking to people about Mamba models that have a longer memory, in
Mhm.
effect. What's the architecture that you guys are using?
Yeah, we're actually not disclosing the architectures of our
Okay,
models. That's like kind of a little bit of our secret sauce. We've transitioned to LLMs, but there's our purpose-built LLMs that are built for translation over the course of last year, kind of going with the flow of the advances in the technology, and that has given us once again a bigger boost there. There's also models involved for speech recognition, of course, when we're thinking about speech to text there,
yeah,
and we're trying to make sure that our translation models are also really tailored to how you need to translate spoken language, just because it's a little bit different than what you'd usually write, and the models need to be able to cope with that too.
yeah. So the product, how do you sell the product? I mean, is it an API? Is it a usage based model,
Mhm.
or is this piece of software that people embed in their own systems?
Yeah, it's actually like the part where I said like it has evolved over the last years. It has evolved into a complete platform there, and the way that we're thinking about that is really enabling a whole enterprise to solve all of their translation and language challenges that they might have, and that starts with like a seat-based subscription for all of those of your employees that really need access to this instant translation. Like all of those who are exposed in some ways to an international context, who don't want to go to an agency, who don't want to work maybe with an internal localization team. That's kind of, there's always like a turnaround time for that. If you want to have the translation immediately, then you can be equipped with that. And it starts with that, giving all of the employees access to the platform. But then when you think about this further, there is some workflows that an enterprise is going to be running that can benefit from a deeper embedding of the technology into those flows. A typical one would be like a customer support use case where there is inquiries from customers coming in from different parts of the world, and you always want to route those to the agent responding to those in the relevant language, and therefore kind of being able to serve your customers better. So from that perspective, we think about that in a kind of holistical way. There's different ways to approach the technology itself, from an end user based application over to our DeepL Write product, which helps you express yourself in your native language with DeepL Voice, speech to text, and then obviously all of those services can be also accessed via the API to embed into your workflows.
Yeah. And the uh, give me what's the most common use case that you're serving, and frankly, I mean, this machine translation has revolutionized anyone who's working across languages. I spent a lot of my time in China. I can read basic Chinese, but it's slow and painful. But now I read Chinese websites with no
Mhm.
problem because built into uh, my browser is a translation function. I think it's from Google. I don't know, and it does a pretty good job. I mean, how do you? That's what I was saying. How do you? Uh, why would companies use DeepL as opposed to just using the Google plugin, for example?
Mhm. I mean, I can only confirm that kind of this development of technology has been amazing. Like, we, like 10
Yep.
years ago, we wouldn't have thought of all of that being really possible. And like, one of the kind of latest points for me to really realize was with me sitting in a customer conversation in Japan, where until now we actually either had an interpreter in the room, or I had
Yeah.
members of my sales team kind of trying to help me and interpret while we've been going. But it's always cumbersome. That really doesn't work that nicely, and is just a bad experience. And right now with technology, I had access to like the full breadth of the conversation. I could express myself freely, knowing that the technology is going to be able to pick up on the nuances in my English and translate them correctly into Japanese. That's been pretty amazing, and I think kind of the difference that DeepL is making, comparing to maybe some of those more consumer-oriented solutions on the market, is the accuracy part, is the integrations into workflows, is the ability even for a company to tweak their language of the translation towards what they need, whether that's compliance rules, or whether that's certain aspects of how the brand voice looks like,
Yeah.
but then going like really also deeply into terminology. And if you think once again about legal text, about technical text, that matters quite a lot, because it reduces the amount of work that you have correcting the text, and that plays a big role for our customers in terms of ROI, because kind of any additional editing that must be done on top of
Sure.
the AI's output, that's incredibly expensive comparing
Yeah.
to the technology cost.
What's a typical use case? If a company has an office in Japan,
Mhm.
does can will For example, will English language emails automatically be translated into Japanese? Or if you're sharing a document, is the document automatically translated into? I mean, give me a couple of use cases.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the example is great, and I think like one of my favorite customers is an automotive company which has all of the R&D really in Japan,
Mm,
whereas large parts of the customer base and the markets are in the US, in Europe, and there is really this language barrier between R&D and between the field, and obviously like they need to talk to each other.
mhm.
And in those cases, it really depends also on the customer. There's those who have translation really embedded into their own systems in the company, so that, as you say, like every email that gets sent out and it's a different language, it gets automatically translated. Documents that are posted into a system. Be it like a contract management system, for example, are being automatically translated. There's tons of plugins that work with DeepL in those systems and integrations that do that automatically. But sometimes it is really the kind of the user who either uses our browser extensions, our desktop apps, or just goes purely to the website and takes the content of the current document that they've received, translates it, and uses it for its own consumption or even publishing it within the company.
Yeah, and in that case, where it's documents, like as you said, technical documents and that sort of thing, do you build an ontology for each customer between the language pairs, or how does that work so that you can ensure accuracy?
Yeah, there's terminology bases that customers can embed into DeepL, or that you can even ask DeepL to kind of infer from your existing translations. As a company, you usually come in with a history of maybe a massive set of documents haven't been already translated in the past, and you can ask the AI that we provide to give you like to extract the terminology out of those documents. Like what is special basically about your language comparing to maybe the average that you would want to check and then embed into further translations that are being produced by DeepL. But also you can come in with your pre-made, categorized glossaries, terminology bases. Just plug them into the AI. It's going to know those words. It's going to be able to properly use them in all of those sentences. It's going to be able to even sometimes figure out when there's false friends in those translations, when in certain areas you actually don't want to use the terminology that is embedded into the glossary because it doesn't make any sense really, and then deviate from what it was supposed to do in that situation. So you have a lot of control, but at the same time the AI remains incredibly smart about the language being used and makes sure that whatever you're translating maintains both this DeepL typical accuracy, but also this nuance and the look and feel of somebody native has been writing that.
Yeah, you were saying it's a platform, meaning. I mean, but you also mentioned browser extension. Uh, so how does a company work with DeepL? Do they work through a DeepL website,
Mhm.
or yeah, just
I
describe that.
think I think translation is such a broad use case that and therefore there's also different ways of applying that and different ways of
Yeah.
applying it to different workflows. And we as a provider of this kind of complete solution package of this platform are trying to accommodate to also what our customers really want. there. So, which is why I mentioned, like, there's the browser extension for those who really want to work in their browser, but you don't have to do that. You can go to the website. So there's different means, and that really depends on the company, how their technological stack looks like, how much they want to deeply embed translation into some of those workflows, or whether it's just a casual kind of long tail workflow in that particular case.
Do you see wide adoption of this technology among multinationals that have offices? I mean, as I said, I worked for a long time in China. I've worked in Europe, and uh, generally, multinational companies have senior staff that speak English, and even mid-tier staff speak English. So English had become the lingua franca of business. Um, with this technology, do you see, first of all, do you see multinationals adopting it, and is it expanding their footprint? Do you think, uh, or do you think it's uh, leading to less emphasis on the use of English by non-native English speakers?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, like, multinationals are a big part of our customer base, and I think sometimes, like, we expect everyone to accommodate that the company's lived language is English, but we sometimes underestimate how big a problem, or a bit of a kind of maybe even efficiency challenge that is for some of the employees that are out there sitting in a non-English speaking country, and for them, quite often it is just much more efficient, even if they can speak the language, to write it in their native language, then translate it, or it just kind of gives them this confidence in being able to express themselves in a way that is much more professional, that is that is on a comparable level as their peers who are maybe coming from the US or from UK, or another English speaking country. So there's a big emotional component to that quite often, but there's also just this pure productivity efficiency aspect that is still really important, and we're seeing that across multinationals, and, like, in general, international companies, that whenever there's a bit of spotlight on getting that diverse employee base engaged in conversations, making sure that they participate, then the technological solution to that becomes quite often the choice very, very quickly.
Yeah. Do you? I mean, you've been in this end of the AI world for a while. What fascinates me about it is the gradual breakdown of language barriers between cultures and the increased understanding between cultures that is likely to come from that. Uh, how do you view that? I mean, do you think that it accelerates or expands business communication, and do you see a day when language will no longer be an issue at all?
I think we're moving into this direction where language is not gonna be an issue at all, and funnily, it I think solutions like DeepLs really help even maintaining those local languages, because
Yeah.
yes, you have to speak English in your business world, but maybe you don't have to put so much emphasis on that, and you can live in your local language much better. Also, I think over the last years, customers' expectations when it comes to the language in which they're being handled and spoken, communicated to, have grown. So all those multinational companies that we've been just talking about, they cannot afford anymore to just offer customer service and customer support in English. They will have to accommodate to the local markets. This is just how the demand is growing. People know that those solutions are out there and it's possible, and the competitors are just frankly doing that. So I think the technology is actually contributing very much to the local strengths in different languages, and I really like that aspect. I think that brings in this diversity there, but at the same time, it makes our life so much easier when it comes to international business and global trade. And we've seen a very strong correlation in our customer base, depending on how strong trade relationships are between countries, and also then the demand on language translation as a like for a country as a whole.
How many language pairs do you cover?
We cover over 30 languages right now, so kind of the pairs is gonna it's gonna be like the square product of those. So it's a large space. We are mainly focusing really on quality, and specifically for those languages that are the most important in the business area, and where also the amount of data available and the focus that we can put on those languages allows us to achieve this kind of typical DeepL quality that our customers and our users know and expect from the service.
Yeah. The what's the smallest language in terms of the population, speaking population that you have, or one of the more uh, exotic? I don't mean exotic because I hate that word actually. Exotic.
That's
But
actually, yeah, that's a good question. I don't have an answer for you on that. Like, it's gonna be like one of the smaller European languages for sure, but I haven't like really checked on which one of those is really the smallest one in terms of the number of speakers or the population base.
yeah, and are you growing the number of languages you cover, or is your focus on uh, you know, on verticals, on maybe medical or scientific uh, areas where the language becomes more specialized?
Yeah, actually both. I mean, the language portfolio is expanding all of the time, and we're bringing in new languages like every year. This year is going to be a little bit more about Asian languages. There's still a huge market there. There's more and more collaborations and cooperations that we're seeing within our customer base that span between Asian countries directly, and not only between kind of Europe and the US and Asia. So there's more and more demand for Japanese to Vietnamese translation, for example,
Mhm.
Japanese Korean translation. So that's something that's kind of coming up as actually the economic ties between Asian countries are also strengthening, at least from our perspective over the last years. At the same time, we're looking also as a company more and more into different verticals in the particular language space that's there. We can take maybe life sciences as a good example of that, with like very specific terminology there, even FDA related requirements on how translation needs to look like, and we're working with our customers to broaden our product also in that direction. And sometimes that's really like hard AI work to make sure that the models are capable of this particular language type. And sometimes it's really also industry specific integrations and understanding how does translation plug into some of those workflows specific for those areas.
Yeah, actually, that's fascinating. I mean, I sort of assume that your user base is primarily native English speaking companies trying to reach extend their or make their communications easier with non-English native English speaking companies, but there's a lot of uh, the world is doesn't touch English at all. It's between non-English language pairs. What's the biggest pair that you see there with the highest demand for?
I mean, like English German is still our strongest, and that's also kind of because maybe that's one like our home turf
Yeah,
that we're operating in. But that's not only because of that. If you look at the distribution of translations being found on the internet in different language pairs, then English German is actually one of the biggest one, if not the biggest one.
is that right?
Yeah, it's actually just because of the kind of economic ties between Germany and the rest of the world being pretty strong. It's a country that's been exporting for so many years and had this very deep trade relationships with the rest of the world, and most of what was happening externally kind of really goes into or is being translated into English. Chinese, Japanese are also then always into English, are also incredibly strong pairs. And then pretty quickly we're gonna see like some non-English pairs. Japanese, Korean is one of the important ones. German, French, just because there's like kind of directly on the border, and there's no need for using English as an intermediary
Right.
language in the conversations between like a German company and their French customer. So you're going to see a lot of direct German French material going through DeepL.
Yeah, that's interesting because until now, English has been the intermediary language. I mean, a German company speaking to a French company, generally they'll speak English, in my experience. Um, in uh, what verticals do you see the most demand in?
Mhm.
I mean, you mentioned life
Yeah.
sciences, but
It's mostly really those that have the highest dependency on translation quality, but also compliance aspects, where kind of every word matters. Where DeepL is pretty strongly represented within legal firms, within professional services companies, everywhere where there is like a big numbers of documents being exchanged, where there's a lot of white collar work, knowledge workers happening, and at the same time where the stakes are high. And I think legal, life sciences, professional services, but also manufacturing. Because really, manufacturing companies very often span different continents. They span different languages. At that makes them relevant for us, and the kind of language barrier being important for them.
yeah, the do you service the European Commission or any of the EU bodies?
And I think not directly to a large extent. I think certain EU bodies might be using DeepL either through us or through partners there. But we're working with other governments and have actually government contracts, especially for countries which are multilingual.
Mm.
That's a big market for us, just given their internal needs for even publishing documentation and materials, and the legal ramifications on what they're obliged to do.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I mentioned the EU. I mean, don't they have to publish every document in I don't five
Yeah.
languages or something? I can't remember, but yeah, and I would guess on latency. I mean, you're not doing real time right now, uh, but you did say instant. So what kind of latency are we talking about?
It's like when it comes both to text and speech, I think we're thinking quite often 200 milliseconds,
Yeah.
something in that range. That's not a lot, and I think that really helps you being able to when it's about speech to text to follow very well that conversation. It's not zero though. That is still latency, and we're working very hard to get that down. And that is both work on the level of making the models faster, smaller, and being able to just be more efficient, but also deploying the models as near to the user in geographically distributed data centers, and that still matters.
Yeah. Although 200 milliseconds is pretty fast still. The uh, So are people using DeepL not only for text to text, in which case latency isn't as critical, but for subtitling, for example, in a Zoom call or uh, yeah,
Yeah, with DeepL voice, that's exactly the case. It's real time meeting, subtitling, and therefore, like, this is really critical when it comes to speed. This is essentially real time in that case. But also with text to text, latency matters. And for example, in customer support chat use cases, we're fighting for every 100 milliseconds there too, because that all adds up for a great customer experience. And whatever is the inherent latency of the response of somebody whom you're talking to, you don't really want to add up a lot on the translation itself. So minimizing that is an important part, and actually something that our customers really care about, and are asking for.
yeah, and the on that uh, 200 milliseconds. Um, I mean, as we said at the beginning, depending on the language pairs, there's kind of a fixed uh, latency because
Mhm.
depending on how fast the speaker is speaking, because you need uh, to get to the end of a sentence before you can accurately translate the full sentence. So, how do you bring down that latency? Is it through prediction, which
It's yeah.
then, yeah,
It's it's
go
it's a
ahead.
mix. It is there's a bit of just simply sometimes waiting for the end of the sentence and then translating as quickly as possible. But there's also an aspect of prediction in that, and sometimes the kind of advantage that you have with subtitles is that if you're wrong with your translation, you can still correct yourself. Like you
Yeah,
can basically flip the subtitle a bit, and we're trying to minimize that as much as possible, because that is a bit confusing if that happens too often. But in rare cases when this really occurs, when the prediction is not correct, you can pull that, and that helps to bring down the overall latency of the whole conversation.
yeah. Does DeepL provide its tech as a component for other software systems that
Mhm.
are then being sold onward? I mean, I'm thinking I talked to a guy recently who's developing a live translation plugin for Zoom, uh,
Mhm.
and I mean, is it possible that what he's doing is taking DeepL and adding some bells and whistles and rebranding it? I mean, do you do that? Provide that as a
Yeah.
part of a tech stack?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's kind of basically the API play that we have, and I talked about that being like relevant for enterprises to put in translation into their internal workflows, but it applies in the same way to tech companies who just want to have translation as part of their product. And under the hood, a lot of the translation that you're going to be seeing in some tools is going to be actually provided by DeepL in the background. So we've been at the forefront of this translation space for quite a while, and have been able to build out those relationships with ISVs, with companies that build great products, but also need a translation component in those. And this ranges really from software that is intended for very dedicated small audiences, like for lawyers, for example, across to general productivity suites, which cater to like basically all knowledge workers out there, and also need that translation aspect as part of what they're doing.
Yeah. And is the I would guess, but I want to hear it from you. Is your market expanding quickly, or is are there so many players in the market that it's slowing down growth?
It's I mean the big players and the competition is something that we've been born into.
Yeah.
It is basically something that we've lived from the beginning on, and that competition is out there. That's going to be always out there. It's part of our DNA to be able to cope with that. I think what is exciting about this market is that the possibilities and the abilities of the AI are ever increasing, and every year we are basically seeing new advances. And those advances, like every time we build something new, they really enable new use cases where
Yeah.
machine translation can come in. There's use cases where 5 years ago you wouldn't ever think about using machine translation for that because you'd think it's just too critical, and right now our customers are finding out, hey, that's like totally enough, and we can speed up our development cycles. We can reach new customer bases. We can be just so much more efficient with the technology, and therefore I think the market is really expanding, and also expanding for us pretty rapidly.
Yeah. Do you do you work with any news organizations? And I ask because I was at the New York Times for much of my career, uh, and I actually ran or established the Chinese language platforms. Uh, and we used human translation. We had a team of translators that sat every day. They translated 30 odd articles
Yeah.
in Beijing. Uh, and I remember being really eager for machine translation to start working, and I left before that happened. But but it seems that this would be perfect for news organizations to broaden their footprint, so, or their audience. So are you working with news organizations, and if so, can you talk about any that are using the tech?
Yeah, it is one of our customer bases, and many of them I cannot talk about. The one that I can talk about is actually Nikkei in Japan, who have been translating all of their articles, or like making them available to a more international reader base with technology, and I always found that fascinating in a way that this kind of ability to read up on what's happening in another country in their own, with their own
Yeah,
local press, that always
yeah,
gives a so much better perspective on what's actually happening there, rather than going to your local newspaper
that's
and getting like a third party view on what's happening there.
yeah,
And that's both kind of enabled by some of those publishers who are doing that with DeepL. And on the other hand, there's obviously also DeepL users who are using our browser extension, and kind of
yeah,
reading up on their own without the kind of publisher's direct support.
yeah. The news organizations that are using it, are they do they just put a link in their on their website if you want to read this in English, French, German, or click here, or are they publishing entire sites in English if they're
Mhm.
say Japanese to give an English language audience access?
Yeah, the answer is a clear both. So we've seen both. There are publishers who just give like offer that as an on-demand functionality for the users, but there's also publishers who just want to like run subsites of whatever their offering is and do that in a different language. And sometimes it's like fully automatic translation. Sometimes depending on the visibility of the article and the criticality of that, there's a human aspect in that, and there's a review going on. We've seen basically all of those, and like our technology enables all of those use cases. It's up for the publisher, for the customer, really to decide on how they want to interact with an international audience, and that really very much also depends on the publication and the country you're in.
Yeah. And is it priced uh, so that I mean, you said a subscription. Is Are there subscription tiers based on? And you also mentioned seats. That
Mhm.
depending on how many people in an organization. So, can you describe the sort of pricing matrix a bit?
Yeah. Basically, two models there. I mean, when it comes to equipping your employees with just the kind of easy access to the tool to do their own translations, then it's seat based, as I mentioned. But as soon as it goes into the direction of the API and integrating that into workflows, integrating into other products, then it's going to be the typical API consumption based, usage based model where we price per basically character translated.
Yeah. Okay, I'm running out of things to ask. What would you like listeners to know that I haven't talked about?
Yeah, I would like everyone to be really fascinated by how AI can really revamp that space and how we communicate with each other. I think there's a very pragmatic aspect to that, and like how well is the communication in my company working? How well can I reach new markets? How good am I competing in this global world as a company? But there's also really this emotional aspect of that, and we had employees from our customers on stage in our customer events, who've been really feeling differently about how they can participate in this global work environment, since they have access to this technology. And with all of that efficiency, I wouldn't want to forget about the kind of human aspect of how much language is embedded into who we are, and how we can exchange with others. So and therefore, like, I'm super excited about what the technology brings in the future, and how we're going to be able to grow together even a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned I'm not sure if this is what you were talking about, but how it protects or preserves languages that are otherwise being eroded by English. I mean, I've spent time in the Arctic, and there's Inuit and some fascinating languages up there, but they're shrinking.
Yeah.
Uh, and something like this would allow them to operate on a global scale without losing their native language.
Definitely. I think it's gonna be more challenging for those like extremely smaller languages, which you're just talking about. But there's even like this mid level of actually big countries with their local big languages. And I've been born and raised in Poland, so this is like Polish is my native language, and even there I see like everybody's learning English, and that's good. They still should, I guess. But having access to technology, which makes it easier for people who are not so well versed in a foreign language, that helps a lot. them to be competitive in the work market, but also them being able to express themselves freely and preserve the language.
Yeah. So looking forward, what does DeepL have in store for us, and how do you see the world evolving with language barriers becoming increasingly porous?
Yeah, I mean, like we've talked quite a bit about speech translation, and I think that's still an incredibly interesting avenue. I think we're a little bit right now at a level where we've been with text translation in maybe 2018 or so. It's still the early days, and I'm excited to see how that really plays out in real life usage in all of those multinational businesses. I think when it comes to text translation, I'm still really excited about the path of making sure that every company can speak their own language and how customizable AI can become in an easy way. We've spoken a little bit about terminology today. That's kind of the beginnings. I think we're gonna be able to, in a much better way, make sure that all of those businesses are unique out there and also unique in the way that they're communicating, and that the AI really understands what is being communicated. So I think a lot of advancements that are coming up in this area, and of course, like quality advancements in all of the languages that we have out there. There's still a long way to go. I think we've come to an excellent translation quality for the major languages that we know, but for smaller language pairs, there's still work to do, and we really should not forget those.
Yeah, yeah, and just on that, on the quality of translation, uh, is it that the translation, when you run into quality issues, is it that the translation is understandable but is clearly not uh, from a native speaker, or is it that there are uh, mistranslations that could change the meaning of sentences?
Like the mistranslation case is getting rarer and rarer as the technology
Yeah,
develops. Like obviously we cannot fully rule that out, as much as we also cannot rule that out with like human translation mistakes just happen
sure.
there. I think exactly to what you're saying. It's like sometimes it just doesn't sound that great yet,
Right, right.
and we got to get the technology to the level where it always just feels supernatural and as if a native speaker would have written that.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll wrap up, but I'm just, as you're talking, I'm thinking that it would be great to have a site that translates all the world's major media in one place. So you know, you could pick a topic, or maybe that exists. Do you know if that exists? Where
I don't know of that existing. I don't know if the publishers would be so happy about like an aggregator like that. I think that's a discussion of a different type there. But I think, I mean, in general, it is really possible. Like take DeepL, take the DeepL's browser extension, put that into your browser, and just go to all of those different media places out there in the world, and start browsing their content. That's feasible already
yeah,
now.
you don't sell the browser extension as a standalone product, do you?
There's a free tier there, so you just can download the browser extension and start using that. And depending on then kind of on your usage patterns and like how much and what do you need, there's gonna be an affordable plan there to use that.
Okay, great. Well, I'm gonna download it as soon as we're done with this call.
Perfect. And
Um,
Eddie can assist if there's anything on the team.
sure.